ready.
Okay, we are recording, so whenever you're ready, please begin.
This is the Tommy and the Hun. I am the director, James O'Gorman.
I'm the assistant director, Saeed Hassan.
I'm DOP, Ewan Jones.
And I'm producer, Jack Coughlin.
We have a quote here from Hun Pitch, who served in both World War I and World War II. He was the last surviving soldier of World War I who sadly passed away in 2009. And I feel like his message perfectly encapsulates our film's message. Just a bit of brief history, very quickly, of World War I. World War I kicked off in 1914 due to the assassination of the Archduke in Hungary. Europe went to war with each other. Sides were formed, and later on in the war, the Americans and other colonies and places and countries joined in with the British and Europe. The synopsis for the film: the idea is to try and do something a bit different from your typical war film. The idea of the Tommy and the Hun. The Tommy is what the British soldiers used to call themselves, the common Tommies, and the Huns were the nicknames for the Germans and what they referred to themselves as. And the idea is to try and do something a bit different from more recent films like 1917, where it shows the British as heroes, and other sort of war films where it's usually the British or the Americans that are heroic. I wanted to portray more of an anti-war message with this. I wanted this film to be different. And the idea of the film is a British soldier who's been wounded and presumed dead has been found by a German soldier, and the German soldier is a deserter, and he's looking after this British soldier. He's nursing the British soldier's wounds. But neither of them speak each other's language, and it starts off with a conflict between that. The British Tommy, he's having none of this. He doesn't want to be taken care of by a German. He thinks he's been captured. He thinks it's tricks. He thinks the German's lying to him. But through communication using hand signals and body language, eventually they start to build a bit of a bond with each other. And the idea is that without actually ever talking to each other, they can build sort of a bond and trust, so this British soldier could survive and he can get his wounds treated too.
So I'm going to talk about the genre of war, which has been around since the beginning of cinema. It's a genre that is made to show the horrors of war, but most of them also show anti-war messages, and especially during World War II, the films there were made to promote propaganda and get people to go into war to fight for their country.
So in terms of aesthetics for this project, during a lot of my research to other war films and films of the same genre, one of the biggest aesthetics is going to be man versus nature. So as well as the battles that are being fought on the battlefield, often these soldiers that would be partaking in these kind of battles would often be battling the elements like the cold and the rain and the mud, in order to try and stay alive, because obviously there was very squalor conditions and things like the trenches. Another big thing would be so it'd be very muddy and gritty. One big thing is obviously if we are going to be getting costumes for this, which we'll talk about later, they have to be roughed up, they have to be dirty, they have to be, they have to look authentic as possible, which will relate back to our audience research as well.
Yeah, with the aesthetics as well, like we said, man versus nature. Like Ewan said, we want the characters to feel dirty and stuff. When we went and saw 1917, a lot of the soldiers were dirty, they were rough, they looked upset because they were living in such poor conditions, and we want to reflect that poor conditions through the muddied costume, the tired looks, the sort of, it looks disgusting, and no one would want to be in that sort of condition.
So these are some of the locations that we've been researching. One of them is Ashridge Estate in Berkhamsted. So I really like this location because there's a lot of tall, winding trees. It's a very foresty landscape. One major sort of thing that might push us off this location is the bluebells that are populated. It might clash with the colours that we're kind of looking to go for. But obviously for all locations that we do, we are going to go and do an audio and video recce, so we know exactly what we're dealing with, so that we know wind noises or car noises or anything like that. And the other one is Sean Woods in Gravesend in Kent. I really like this one as well, because there's again a lot of pathways, muddy pathways, long trees. I like the way the light breaks through a lot of these trees, especially on a sunny day. Could look really cinematic. One thing we've got to be very considerate of is where the battles were taking place in these battles. Where they were settled in Europe, like Belgium and northern France. So we have to make sure that is reflected through our locations.
I'm going to talk about the costumes, which we have images that were taken from the Imperial War Museum. This is the German soldier uniform, which before the war started, they were more of a lighter green, and when the war started and as it went on, they got more of a darker green. And again, we've got the Imperial War Museum photos of the British soldier as well. These started as olive green colours and for the jackets, and they also had the brown trousers and the webbing, which was used to hold ammunition, water, and supplies to help them during the war.
Also, the olive green is obviously to help them blend in with their environments and stuff, as well as they were fighting. And typically, although the areas getting destroyed and stuff, they were typically green areas to help with camouflage.
Our chosen film festival is the Imperial War Museum Film Festival. We chose this film festival because we think that it makes the most sense. As we went there for research purposes to the museum, to take inspiration from there, as well as check out all the costumes and find out more information about how life could have been like on the trenches and all that sort of stuff.
It just makes the most sense. Imperial War Museum, we've taken a lot of inspiration from their collection, and we feel like it would be the most appropriate to submit. Although they didn't have a festival last year, there is a potential. It seems to be the festivals every 2 years, so we're just waiting for confirmation if it's later on this year. We're just keeping a close eye on that, or if it's going to be next year. But like I said, I feel like this is the most appropriate festival to submit to.
Our audience is 18 plus, typically 18 plus for because of the gore and other bloody scenes that might not be typically for anyone under the age of 18. But we also think that it is suitable for anyone who is interested in the historical events, as well as the consequences and the causes and of war, and how it affects soldiers as well as families and other civilians of said country or
Thank you for listening. We welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a lot of information about the World War in this.
Yes.
And I think that might have been excessive. I think as well in your film, you might be intending on putting something similar like that at the beginning. Is that
sorry?
Information about historical.
Yeah. Obviously, because there's a time limit on the film, we have considered about doing like an audio at the beginning, just explaining for the sort of common audience, not just for the people that were intending for the film, but if someone stumbles across it, they may not be fully aware of the events. But like I said, because of our time limit for the film, it might be a little bit of a struggle to put in that history, but we would like that at the start.
From your research into war films, is that something that happens in war films? You get a mini lecture at the beginning?
No.
Right, so...
Well, some films usually might give you sort of a little bit of explanation beforehand, being like, I know at the beginning of 1917 it had the sort of talked about the soldiers and stuff, and sometimes at the end of the film as well, it might say these events were based on
Yeah, I think-
such and such.
And there was one film as well that I've been watching. It was World War One called Journey's End, which was specifically set in the tail end of World War One, which kind of like helped to. It said it was an exposition that explained about what was happening in that particular trench at the time and where they were going. So it sets up the story, if that makes sense.
Just have a look at some short war films and make sure that is the done thing. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
The images that you've used as illustrations of your aesthetic are very, very different. So you've got these really rich, colourful, bright images, and then you've got some really murky. Will the film have both, or?
The film will have a very green and very
But I mean, some of the
warm
pictures were bright, vivid, like luminous green, and others were really, murky grey, washed out green.
yeah. The most of it is going to be murky grey, and it is going to be very natural looking.
I spoke to you, and I sort of wanted the beginning of the film to sort of be dirty and gritty, whereas as it gets closer to the end, as they're bonding, sort of brighten up the vibes and the colours a little bit to sort of just add that little bit more to it.
Okay. Have you considered filming this in black and white?
We did discuss this, but I feel like if you do it in black and white, I feel like it might take away from maybe the dark browns and the dirty tones, and I like the idea throughout the film as they're getting closer, it actually gets brighter, and the sort of colours become a bit more hopeful.
Okay.
Instead of sort of the drained dead colours of like the dead earth, I kind of like the idea of it gets more lively.
Okay. Saeed,
Mm-hmm.
what is your role?
Assistant director. It was producer, but it was given to.
And so, what will your responsibilities and tasks and paperwork be as assistant director?
I've really just found out that's what I was going to be, so I'm going to have to speak to James about that.
Yes.
Right.
Saeed will be helping me on set as I'm talking to actors. So I will be helping me on set. He will be there on hand with the scripts and stuff. He will also be my script advisor. He will be making sure the stuff that I do he goes through with fine sort of what's the saying?
Fine-tooth comb.
Refining
Fine-tooth
the,
comb, yeah. And Saeed's going to be Saeed's done probably the most research out of all of us. He's been looking into sort of the costumes, the pricing, the budgeting.